Permiso, buenas tardes.
Good afternoon. Hello, teachers again, everybody. I'm so happy to start again a new webinar, okay, as we usually have every Saturday. So English teachers from Ecuador and from Peru too, because we have some teachers that follow these webinars from Peru. I say welcome to everybody. Today we have our special guest, Mr. Jesús Salinas, who is consultant and he's a representative, Cambridge person who prepares for the international exams, and he also has his own language center. He prepares teachers and people in general for certification. So for me, it's a pleasure to introduce him. I had the opportunity to meet him for the first time in Guayaquil, I think, Mr. Jesus. I remember you in the Congress of Universidad Católica, maybe 2 years ago, approximately. And I remember your webinar was very interesting. So, teachers, we are going to start our webinar. Mr. Jesus, you can start. Welcome.
Thank you, Andres, for the invitation. Thank you, everybody, for being here. It's a Saturday afternoon, and it means a lot if you're here because you want to learn something else, or maybe share experiences, because as I usually say, we are here not only just to listen to a person, but to share experiences. For example, I remember the time when I went to Guayaquil, which was a really marvelous city when I was there. And it was my third time, I think, in Universidad Católica, Santiago de Guayaquil. What I remember is that I got to Guayaquil, I was there. I stayed for 4 days, I guess, or 3 days approximately. And in those days, it was the year 2016, the first time I went there. But I remember the topic I was delivering was about classroom management. So
I think so.
Yeah, it was about classroom management, but then something that you learn, because you know that this world of teaching is always learning. It's about learning all the time. Was that I had prepared some strategies about classroom management, which are proven strategies, but then when I heard some teachers about the realities they had in public schools, so I maybe thought I should have maybe researched a little bit more before presenting this workshop here, because there were some specific circumstances which I actually didn't take into consideration, as for example the number of students you have there in Ecuador. As I always say, it's always a lifelong learning path when you have this opportunity of sharing with this, let's say, this audience now. And I'm sure that maybe when I finish the presentation, we're going to have some questions, and then I will be able to clarify some of the little knowledge I have to share with you, because as teachers, we have different contexts, we have different realities, we have different experiences, and in the end, everybody learns, right, from these kinds of webinars. Okay, shall I start?
Yes, you can start now, Jesus.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. My name is Jesús Salinas for all the people who have gathered today. Thank you. I have Alexandra, Liz, Carlos, Julia, Amparo, Alba, Julia, Luis, Mesias, Mercedes, Maribel, and DOWLESS, right? So welcome to this presentation. My name is Jesús Salinas. I am a teacher trainer, a certified teacher trainer by Cambridge University, as well as I am a consultant, a freelance consultant for Macmillan Education in Peru. I also work for Colegio San Agustín here, which is an IB school. And as Andres mentioned before, I work on the preparation of Cambridge exams. So I train teachers, I train students, teacher trainer, as well as for the different qualifications we have for teachers as TKT, Core, TKT, Young Learners, TKT, CLIL, and other courses that are specialized on teaching. So the topic I'm going to deliver today it has to do with Cambridge exams, because sometimes when we have some presentations, they focus on generalities. I mean, they focus on just what writing is like, for example, or what do I need to know in order to write? What are the concepts I need to be aware of writing? So now what we're going to do is the connection between these concepts and the actual assessment that we have when we undergo a Cambridge exam. You know that that's something I always say. When we are teachers, we have to focus, we need to care for two specific aspects. The first aspect is to pay attention, right? Actually, to boost our command of language. And how can we boost or enhance our command of language? We can do it by taking an international exam, no? That is a proven certificate that will allow you to certify your level of English, especially the ones who are speakers of other languages, as the majority of us, right? So that's a paper, a qualification that will be valid worldwide. And I don't know if it happens there in Ecuador, but here in Peru, we have a reality in which we have many institutions, many institutes, language centers, in which you finish your studies after 3 years. They usually take 36 months, right? And after those 36 months, the students who finish their studies, they finished, for example, here there is a very prestigious institution, which is IBNA. I think in Ecuador there is another one. I don't remember exactly the name, but it's Centro Cultural Peruano Norteamericano here in Peru. In Ecuador, it has a different name, but it's something like that, right? For example, just to set an example. And they study for 3 years, no? From real beginners till advanced. And it happens to me that many of them come and say, teacher, I want to take an international exam because I finished my 3 years at IBNA. And what I usually respond to is, okay, and what exam do you want to take? And they say, I want to go for the CAE. The CAE, which is the advanced level. And then I usually ask, but are you certified in the FCE, which is the previous exam, or maybe the Michigan exams, ECCE? No, but I finished my advanced level at this institution, and I have an advanced level. Then I say, yeah, but it doesn't mean that you have an advanced level, right, in the Common European Framework Reference. And then they try to attempt a placement exam, and they notice that they are not in advanced level. They are maybe in a B1 level, sometimes A2. At some exceptions, B2, but they are not in C1. So that is a problem here. I don't know if in Ecuador it happens the same, but the standardization of levels is a very serious problem, because in institutions, you don't have any regulation. When you certify somebody and you are approved by the Common European Framework of Reference, that's a different thing. Because if you have an advanced level in Ecuador, in Peru, you can have it in China or in the Philippines, wherever you go. That's why standardization is highly important. But in the domestic market, we could call it, it doesn't happen like that. So the regulation maybe is not that strict. So that's an important aspect we need to pay lots of attention. So in that regard, in this presentation, what we're going to do is just to see some specific concepts, general concepts that we need to know about writing, and then what is the criteria of assessment that Cambridge uses when we are going to undergo a Cambridge exam. So now, please, I'm going to share my screen so that we can start with the presentation. I'm going to make the presentation, and maybe as it is divided into 5 parts, right? As you can see here, it is 5 sections. Maybe after the section 2 or 3, I'm going to stop just to ask you if you have any question. And then I'm going to continue. And by the end of the session, I will read all the questions that you have. Maybe you feel free to write questions on the chat, and then we're going to go one by one, whatever it takes, right? That's my commitment. If it takes an hour or half an hour or 15 minutes, I will be there to answer the questions. Okay, this is the topic, making the most of my writing performance in Cambridge exams. This is the logo of the English Language Center we have here in Peru that is called English Tower. We are a teacher training center, as well as a preparation center, and an official preparation center for Cambridge examinations. My name is Jesús Salinas, and I'm just greeting you from Chiclayo in the north of Peru. Okay, let's start. First of all, we're going to contextualize what writing is, right? So writing is one of the skills, you know, that is one of the 4 skills, right? What is writing is a productive skill. You know that we have the skills divided in 2 categories. The first category is productive skills that are, it comprises writing and speaking. And then you have the receptive skills, which are listening and reading. Involves producing language. You need to produce language when you write. Involves a message and a receptor. So it cannot exist if there is no message or if there is no receptor. If you're writing, nobody reads your paper, that's not writing. Requires letters, words, and sentences linked together. This is an important aspect because, first of all, we focus on letters, then we focus on words, and finally, in sentences linked together. What is the usual problem we have when we teach writing or when teachers teach writing? The problem is that our students, they usually focus on words. Sometimes they focus on sentences, but not very often they focus on a whole text. So the comprehension, for example, if we talk about reading, which is a connected and integrated skill, so usually they pay attention only to letters. And that's why we have learners who are accustomed to translating word by word. No? And they don't understand that sometimes we have phrases, idioms, chunks, they come together as a collocation. So what is better for the teacher? To teach chunks, to teach phrases rather than words. So that's why they don't pay attention to the whole text. Then we have, what is a written document? Well, a written document, if we compare, now a written document has a different, let's say, perspective. On the left, we have different written documents that we are used to seeing, right? As a letter, or maybe as a flyer, as a booklet, as maybe a brochure, etc., etc. But now, even more with the pandemic, a written document is no longer this. We have, for example, the emails that nowadays we communicate the majority of the time now that we are in the pandemic with emails. So that is now a written document for the new generation and for us as well. If we have, for example, a status here at Facebook or Instagram or social networks, that is also considered a written document. Or maybe if we have a blog. So that's the reality nowadays. Students don't read from books anymore. They don't read papers. They read from the computer. So the definition has changed over the years. In the past, it was just what we had in front on printed paper. But now, no. It is also considered as an electronic document. Okay? Then, accuracy. These are some of the sub-skills that we have for writing. Writing for accuracy. Accuracy is the ability to be right, to be correct. When you write for accuracy, you're writing because you want to make no mistakes. And what are the characteristics of writing for accuracy? So, spell correctly. Spelling is an important aspect. Form letters correctly. That's another one. Write legibly. I have a couple of friends who are teachers, and their handwriting is very difficult to understand. So that's another aspect we need to take into account when we write, when we send a document, when we write a letter. Punctuate correctly. Punctuation is an important aspect until the year 2008, right? Backwards, I mean 2007, 2006, and below that, in Cambridge exams, in CAE, for example, we had punctuation exercises. Now they are not anymore, But it was very difficult to, for example, the exercise was you had a text and you had to include the punctuation because the punctuation had been extracted. And you had to work with colon, semicolon, full stop, quotation marks, etc., etc. And then when I remember I took the CA in those years, I remember it was very difficult. You say, punctuation is very simple. Yeah, but when you have an exercise in which you need to punctuate, and Cambridge tells you that you need to do it and it's evaluated, it's a different story. So punctuation is vital. Use correct layouts. A layout is the format of the paper you're going to produce. Either if you're going to write a letter or proposal or maybe a letter of complaint or a report or a story. So there is a layout that you need to fulfill. Sometimes we just write everything all together. We don't respect, we don't pay attention to paragraphs, we don't, let's say, or organize our information. So the layout, it's an important part, a key part. Choose the right vocabulary. When I say, or when we say, choose the right vocabulary, we mean, or we want to focus on the fact that the vocabulary needs to be related to the topic. Something, for example, I always tell my students is that if you're gonna take an exam, for example, if you're gonna take the FC, in the FC you have to write an essay. The first part in the FC, in the CA and CP exams, which is upper main suite exams, the first task in writing is an essay. It's mandatory, so you don't have the choice as in part 2. So, and usually an essay has to do with a global issue, usually, because it's an international exam. Global issues as for example, contamination, as for example, I don't know, ecosystems, as for example, policies, as for example, corruption, as for example, countries, etc., etc. So when it says choose the right vocabulary, the first tip I give my students is that if you're going to write, for example, about global warming, let's suppose that your topic is global warming. So before you write, something that you need to do and is going to give you more marks is to start thinking about what specific related vocabulary do I have that is connected, that is linked to global warming. If I talk about global warming, for example, I can say car fumes, I can say factory fumes, carbon dioxide, I can talk about, I don't know, dumps, I can talk about plastic bags. So all the vocabulary that is associated to the topic. What I can do is just to brainstorm, so that when the assessor or the evaluator of your writing will see it, will notice that actually your vocabulary matches the aim of the task. That is going to give you more marks. That is on the one hand. On the other hand, when I say choose the right vocabulary, it has to do with the fact that if you're writing a letter to a friend, so the register you need to use needs to be informal. But if you're writing a letter to your boss, the register should be formal. So it is an important aspect that sometimes teachers don't pay attention to, because we think that if we use the most formal vocabulary or the most, let's say, we want to create an impact on the reader, that we know lots of vocabulary. But if you're writing to a friend, if you're writing to a colleague, so it's not necessary to use very formal vocabulary. So you just use informal. So that is also evaluated, the register. If the instruction says informal, you need to write informally. If the instruction says that you need to write formally, it needs to be formal, not any other way. So that's why you need to write it, choose the right vocabulary. Okay, then use grammar correctly, join sentences correctly. So grammar is important. Paragraphs, believe it or not, I train teachers and I've noticed that some teachers don't use paragraphs, believe it or not. They use just one single paragraph and they just put everything there. And that is a very reliable aspect that tells you that the teacher or the candidate in general doesn't plan. If you don't plan, you write one paragraph because you're thinking and you're writing, you're thinking and you're writing, and immediately your ideas come to pen or pencil. But then when you want to see the structure, you notice that maybe you repeated some ideas, or maybe you notice that you are not answering the tasks, questions. So that is important to take into account. Yeah, in the chat I have writing for accuracy demands criteria to follow. Yes. That there is a criteria that you need to follow. Formal and informal letters. Welcome again. Okay, yes, formal and informal letters. That's true. And then when I refer to join sentences correctly, when you write, you divide your presentation, your paper, in different paragraphs. So something that is key is to organize the paragraphs with a topic. Maybe it can be an introduction. The first paragraph can be an introduction, depending on the text type. For example, if it is an essay. Yeah, it is important to write grammar correctly. Yes, yes. But something, I mean, it's here, no? It says use grammar and vocabulary. But all the aspects are important, all of them. Because if you notice, the majority of Latin American teachers, right? We are prone to finding mistakes. So when I say prone, it means that we are likely to find mistakes. If you have a native speaker who is your teacher, you will notice that the native speaker will not pay much attention to your mistakes. And actually, the criteria for evaluation in every Cambridge exam that you're going to take, it doesn't matter if it is starters, movers, flyers, CAT, PDF, CA, or CP, is based on the can-do statement from Cambridge. And what is the can-do? It refers to the abilities or skills that you developed and that you can see that you have in your evidence. Speaking exam, writing exam, reading exam. So you need to pay attention to the strengths. No, sorry, to the strengths of the candidate, not to the weaknesses. So what do we do as teachers? We have a keen eye for mistakes. So when we check the papers of writing, we focus on the mistakes too. This is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. And we circle, we circle, we circle, we circle. And then when we finish, you say, okay, Pepito, here is your paper. Very bad. You have 25 mistakes. Yes, maybe Pepito had 25 mistakes. But what we need to emphasize is the good things that Pepito did, not the mistakes. We know that, yes, there are mistakes, that maybe he has the interlanguage, that according to TKT, the interlanguage is your own version of language on the process of learning. So that can happen. But what about the other aspect, the good things that Pepito is doing? Is he transmitting an idea? Is he using paragraphs? Is he connecting sentences? Is he actually dividing the paragraphs? Because the paragraphs need an objective. So sometimes we mix ideas. And when we analyze, we see that maybe in that paragraph, there is an idea that doesn't belong there. It belongs to another paragraph. So that should be penalized, for example. More than grammar, more than vocabulary. Because when is grammar or vocabulary penalized in an exam? It is penalized when it interferes on the communication of the message. I'm going to give you an example. You're writing about what you usually do, or maybe what you do for a living. And you say, actually, I am working as a teacher at Colegio 1234. And you read and you say, actually, what is he emphasizing? And that's what we call in teaching a minimal pair from a second language. What is a minimal pair? That the teacher or the candidate or the student believes that actually is actualmente. But actually means really. And you use it for emphasizing. So in that case, for example, the idea that you are transmitting or that you try to transmit is not the same as the one that you put in paper, right? And that happens a lot when you translate word by word. In that case, that vocabulary mistake is penalized. But if you, for example, if you're writing appropriate with one P and you forgot to write two P's, so if it is once or twice in your paper, that will not be penalized. because it can be taken as a writing mistake, for example. So, yes, it's important to pay attention to these details because sometimes we focus on the mistakes. We pay attention more on to the fact that the students make lots of mistakes rather than the use of grammar, the use of vocabulary, the use of paragraphs, and the joining of sentences. All right, let's continue just a sec. All right. Then we have fluency. Writing for communication fluency. Have enough ideas. Okay, sometimes we have to write about specific topics and we need to organize those ideas into paragraphs, as I said before, and express them in an appropriate style. When I say appropriate style, it depends on the register you have to work on, if it is formal or if it is informal. So writing for communication, which is the same as fluency, that it's a term used for speaking, but actually Cambridge uses it also for writing. So this is the first part, contextualize and writing. So just to revise, I know that you know all of this, right? Then, the cycle of writing. So usually when we write, we need to focus on the different aspects of writing, the different stages for writing. What is the common sense, or what common sense tells us? It tells us that a chef can't cook a good dish unless he has a recipe, right? So you need to plan. Planning is key when writing. Do you know this person by any chance? Or no? No? Well, actually, he's a famous chef here in Peru. His name is Gaston Acurio, and he is one of the most worldwide recognized chefs in the world. And he is like he's an entrepreneur, actually, from the Peruvian cuisine, and he has many restaurants around the world. Yeah, Gaston Acurio. So he's very famous. He's very famous. And it's like an orientation that if you're going to write, you need to know how to write, and you go over different stages. But when you know a recipe, when you prepare a dish, you have a recipe in your mind, and after many times you do it, you master the recipe, and you don't have to read the recipe, you just know it by heart. Yes, that's true. But on the other hand, mastering a writing paper means that you need to plan. Planning involves timing, and that's the problem. The majority of candidates say, no, but I'm going to spend too much time just planning, and maybe I'm not going to have enough time, I'm just going to write. No, because this is a training process. So you are being trained not only to write, but you're going to be trained for mastering the timing for planning. Because as you do it many times, your planning time first maybe is going to be 25 minutes. Then maybe it's going to be 20. Then it's going to be maybe 15. And then you will plan in 10 minutes. And you will see that when you plan, you write faster. Okay, so this is also an important aspect. Okay, then this is the process wheel. So usually we start with planning, then drafting, then editing, and then the final version. This is a synthesis of what we should be doing. I'm going to show you another chart in which there is an extra stage. But in general terms, this is not, I'm not saying that this is the one that you have to follow. There are many versions of this. So, but the most important aspects that you need to take into account are planning, drafting, editing, and final version. Who stated this? Jeremy Harmon in 2011. So that is the process wheel. And according to the process wheel, we have the first stage, that is pre-writing. What do you do in the pre-writing stage? Plan what you're going to write. Sorry, this is a typing mistake. Choose a topic. Identify your audience and topic. Brainstorm ideas. Okay? So that's basically what you have to do, and finally organize ideas into paragraphs. So in the pre-writing stage, first, you identify what you're going to write about and choose a topic. Well, that choose a topic sometimes is not like that because you're given instructions and the topic is given to you. But if you're going to write an essay, an open essay, for example, maybe it's an essay competition, you need to choose a topic or maybe an orientation of the topic, because Sometimes the topic or the general topic is too wide. So you need to go for one topic. So that's why I included choose a topic. Then identify your audience and topic. Who are you going to write to? And what are you going to write about? Brainstorming ideas. And then organize them into paragraphs. So it's in this stage when you are going to brainstorm the different vocabulary related that you will produce in your writing, depending on the topic, as I told you. As I gave you the example of global warming, or maybe if you're going to write about politics, or maybe if you're going to write about, I don't know, medicine or technical English, I don't know. So it depends on what you are going to write about, and then to have a list of terms that you would use in that production. As well as, for example, when you have maybe to give not only the vocabulary, but also expressions. Because here you can brainstorm expressions that will be linking expressions as first of all, then, therefore, on the other hand, on the one hand, all in all, in conclusion. So those expressions that you know that they need to be present so that you can get more marks. That's the way in which you brainstorm ideas, not only the ideas, but also the vocabulary that you will include. And finally, you organize them into paragraphs. Now, when you organize them into paragraphs, you need to know what is the main topic or the general idea of the paragraph. If the paragraph number 1 is going to be about the introduction, okay, it's going to be an introduction. Am I going to include a rhetorical question? Am I going to include my thesis statement? Am I going to include my topic sentence? So all these aspects will be involved in the pre-writing stage. Then we have the drafting. What do you do in the drafting? Well, I think everybody has gone over the drafting. Write your ideas in sentences and paragraphs, and follow your plan, your first draft, sorry. Follow your plan, your first draft. There is a comma missing there. So you need to follow what you have already planned, and you have to put it into the paper. Basically that. After the drafting, we have the edition and proofreading. I put them together. In some models, you have them split. You have first the edition and then the proofreading. But actually, they are connected. And maybe not to give an extra stage, and just to simplify things, I put it all together. Proofreading and editing. So the edition is to make changes that will improve your writing. Now, in the chat, please tell me what kind of changes am I talking about here? What changes do you think we could include here? What changes will improve my writing? Because usually when we think about proofreading, punctuation, very good, Rosemary. Punctuation is part of the edition, yes. And sometimes, believe it or not, we don't pay attention to that. Sentence structure, direct, indirect questions, the word order, run-ons, okay.
Jesus.
Yes, please.
Sorry, you can also change like a spelling words, misspelling words. Some ideas that, as Rosemary said, are run-on sentences or ideas that are unnecessary, to connect. No.
Yes, that's true. That's true. Sometimes we, as you mentioned, Andres. Not only that, we sometimes overuse some expressions, missing words. Correct. Sometimes we think very quickly, and we forget to write some ideas. And when you say the connectors, maybe we tend to use the same words, and then, also, and, no? So what we can do there is just maybe to vary, or to use, as you mentioned, linking expressions that will give an order to the presentation. First of all, second of all, in third place, finally, to sum up, right? So those expressions will enhance. What other things in the edition? You need to enrich your production. For example, if you are writing an expression, as for example, he raised his children, why not using a phrasal verb to enrich it and write, for example, brought up his children? So those kinds of changes are part of the edition. How you can improve your writing by changing certain aspects and make it more, let's say, advanced, depending on the level that you're doing, right? So that it enriches your writing. So that's related to changes. Usual clauses and conditionals, yes, that's also very good, Rosemary. You're very participative. Good. And yes, that's part of the changes. Now let's continue. Check for errors in grammar, spelling, capitalization, nationalities, for example. Not many people writing with capitals, and punctuation. Make a final copy of your composition. You need to come up with a final copy, right? So that's another aspect. Yeah, you win a prize, Rosemary. Very good. Very participative today. Okay, so that's part of the edition and proofreading. Okay, then we have the presentation. In the presentation, you choose a way to present your work to an audience. What ways do we have? In paper, or virtually, in a blog, or maybe in an email. So it depends, right? How you were requested to do it. And this is the ultimate stage. Now, we see all these stages. What do usually candidates do? They do the drafting here and the presentation. No more. They write and they present. They don't plan, they don't pre-write, they don't do the edition and proofreading, they don't enrich the writing, then they don't check for errors, they just write and present. So that is the problem. Now, something important to mention here, as I mentioned also before, is that when you write and you don't plan, because you are not planning, why don't you plan? I don't plan because it takes too long. Okay. But believe it or not, when you write and you don't plan, you take longer rather than when you plan. Why? Because you don't have any guide. You don't have any pattern to follow. You don't have an objective. You might forget of important aspects, as digressing. What is digression? You digress when you, for example, think you have to write a letter stating why, I don't know, why teachers should be better paid, for example. And you start talking about all the efforts that the teachers do when planning their sessions. They are the future of generations that will come, etc., etc. And then you want to tell an anecdote, for example, about a teacher you had. Okay, you write about the anecdote, and then you digress, you lose direction, and then you end up writing about your teacher. And as you don't have much time later after that, and you have to present the paper, you just present it like that. And you didn't answer the question, the initial question. That happens when you don't plan, for example. Another thing that happens is that as you don't have any direction, you stop to think and rethink what you wrote. And then you are insecure because you wrote and you say, but maybe as I have to write 300 words and I have already written 200, in which part am I going to write my conclusion? Because I already talked about this part. So, and then you have to erase. So it takes longer. When you plan, you take 10 or 15 minutes invested well, and then you know what each paragraph will be about, what ideas will go in each paragraph, what topic sentence you will include in each paragraph, and how the conclusion will be, what it will state. So in the end, it is an investment of time. Planning is the key to get your ideas organized and fluent. Yes, that's true. That is true. And I would highlight that in that comment, the word, Gabriela, thank you, Gabriela, for participating, the word fluency. Fluency in writing. Yes, Gabriela. Your fluency in writing will depend on your planning. That is an important concept. The fluency in your writing will depend on your planning. Sometimes it happens that we are writing, and if, for example, when I prepare for B1, preliminary, PET, the students say, teacher, I want to write the story, but I don't have any ideas. Or maybe I want to write about this topic, teacher, but the ideas don't come to my mind now. So they don't come because you are planning while you are writing. Or better said, you don't plan, you write, you think and you write, you think and you write. When you plan, it's different, right? It's a different story. Okay, then we will go to number 3, assessment. But before we continue, I would like to know what are the aspects that you want or you would include in the assessment, or that you maybe previously know about assessment. Rosemary says, if you do not plan, you may end up going around the bushes. Yes, redundant, repetitive, not coherent, right? Yes, TA. What aspects do you consider that examiners take into account when they assess your papers? What do you think?
Coherence, punctuation,
Coherence,
spelling.
punctuation, spelling, okay. Okay, what else?
Rosemary saying organization, yeah.
Organization, coherence, good. Hi, Galaxy J5 Prime. That is the name that it appears. Cohesive devices, okay, Rosemary, very good. Yes, yes, but I don't know if you know, but something that is key. Oh well, before I say this, does anybody train for Cambridge exams here in the audience? Are you, or maybe in the past, did you train any students for Cambridge exams? Okay, Rosemary that says that she does. Very good. Very good, Rosemary. That's why she's answering all the questions. Okay, anybody else maybe apart from Rosemary? Have you ever trained for a Cambridge exam? I mean, that you have students who you are training for exams. Anybody? No? Okay, in general aspects, when you are going to sit an exam, writing, speaking, listening, or maybe you're in your class and your teacher says, we're going to have a presentation and you will have to do this presentation in 5 minutes about this topic and I will evaluate you. So the most sensible thing to do from that teacher is to tell the class what criteria he or she will be using to assess the students. It's not acceptable, it's not coherent that the teacher will say, okay, Andres and Jose, it's your turn. You will be presenting. Perfect. And then Andres and Pepe or Jose, whatever, they finish. Yes, use rubrics. Very good, Rosemary. And the teacher said, teacher, sorry, what is my grade? Jose, you got 15. And Andres or Pepito, you got 10. Pepito will say, why do I have 10? What things I didn't do that did not cover your expectation? So the most sensible thing to do is that you need to share the criteria with the students before you assess, right? So when you train for Cambridge exams, you need to tell your students the criteria so that they know what they are expecting from you. Yes, use rubrics. And we're going to see that in this part. Rubrics are important because in that way you assess the students, and not only in writing, in everything you do. In writing, in speaking, for example, there are speaking rubrics. I am speaking examiner. So when you train your students, you should tell them, these are the rubrics that they will use when they will assess you, right? Karen says, honestly, I have never practiced writing to take an English test. Yeah, don't worry, don't worry. At the end of the presentation, the last part, I'm going to give you a special platform you can use. Maybe you're familiarized with it, but there is a special platform you can use in order to practice your writing and to be notified of your performance. Don't worry. Okay. So, okay, let's continue. Maybe somebody, I think, is with the microphone on. Could you please turn it off? Because there is lots of noise here. Okay, thank you. Okay, let's continue. So the assessment criteria. The assessment criteria for every Cambridge exam is content, communicative achievement, organization, and language, right? I would love to become a Cambridge speaking proctor. Okay, yeah, that's not impossible, Rosemary. You can do it. You can do it. So, assessment criteria, content. What is the content? What you have to write about. What is the communicative achievement? If you actually communicated what you were supposed to do. The organization is the paragraphs, the layout as well of the text type, and the language is grammar and vocabulary. So these 4 components will be part of the assessment in every level of Cambridge exams.
Hello.
Yeah, somebody has forgot to turn off the microphone.
I can't hear you guys.
Hello, good afternoon. Okay, I think it's over. Okay. Okay, let's continue. So, in KED, PED, FC, CA, CP, you have content, communicative achievement, organization, and language. So these 4 criteria are part of the evaluation they will use, of the criteria actually, they will use to assess your papers, okay? Now we're gonna see in detail what are they about. Content. Content, when we talk about content, is, for example, in a letter, it says, you receive, that's from preliminary, for example, from PET, you receive an English, a letter from your English friend, and he says, hello, how are you? I'm talking about international festivals. I would like to know about a festival from your country. When is it? Why is it nice? Would you recommend it? And you have 3 questions there. Please write a letter to your English friend answering the questions. So, when you talk about content, it means that you need to answer the 3 questions that I mentioned. If you write about only 2, you're penalizing content. If you write about only 1, you're penalized. If you don't write about that, if you write about something different, about a festival, and you talk about an experience you had in a festival, you are not addressing the question, so you're also penalized. That's why it says relevance. Relevance means that you are being relevant with your answer in your paper. Target reader, who are you writing to? Are you writing to your teacher? Are you writing to an audience? Are you writing to a group of students? Are you writing to colleagues? The target reader needs to be clear. Informed fully or partly. What is that? It means that in part of the rubric says that in this case, the target reader will be fully informed. It means that the target reader has all the information that he or she requested. If it is partly informed, it means that maybe you omitted some specific details that you were supposed to include. Okay, that is content. That's the first one. Then we have communicative achievement. Communicative achievement is the text type conventions, right? If you are writing about a proposal, if you're writing about a letter, if you're writing about an article, there are some text type conventions. Holding target reader's attention, if you are able to get the attention of the reader with your paper or not, because maybe your paper is redundant or is simply boring. When it is key to have to get the target reader's attention in 2 papers in particular. The first one is the article. Articles need to be engaging and interesting. And the second one is the essay. The introduction of an essay needs to be really powerful so that the target reader will continue reading. Yeah, argument. Yeah, that's also true, Rosemary. Good. Sorry. And then, communicative purpose. Why are you writing? What is the purpose of your paper? That is also tested in communicative achievement. And straightforward and complex ideas. What does it mean for you, straightforward and complex ideas? Any thoughts? No? Straightforward. Yeah, sorry?
It's not going around the bushes, answer the questions in a direct way, and that your ideas are not irrelevant.
Okay. Okay, very good, Rosemary. Thank you very much. Yes, relevance has to do with this. When you talk about straightforward and complex ideas, it has to do with, for example, if you are talking about, let's say, contamination in the world, a straightforward idea, it's like an idea that is predictable. For example, if you say people should not throw rubbish in the streets because we contaminate the world. That is a straightforward idea. It has to do with the topic, and it's an idea that you can predict. But a complex idea would be an idea that provides the reader with a solution to the problem, but is really creative and complex. As for example, I don't know, recycling at home would be the first step in order to avoid contaminating around the neighborhood, for example. You need to start at home so that you make the change of your city. So that would be a little bit more complex because it's not something very predictable. So straightforward and complex ideas. In the communicative achievement, you will see that the rubrics talk about straightforward ideas and then complex ideas to get a higher level of punctuation. No, yeah, the three R's. So, for example, if you write about discipline in the schools, so what are you expected to write about? Yes, schools need to be really strict with discipline because that will create human beings that will be the citizens of tomorrow. That is predictable. What is complex? To say, for example, that schools are the second home of children because they spend so many hours there that in some cases they actually get better knowledge of the problems they have at school rather than at home. So that would be an idea that goes beyond that, right? Disrupting education, for example. So yeah, that is a complex idea. Or to connect disrupting education with the fact that those students usually are the criminals of tomorrow, for example. That is a complex idea. So that's part of the communicative achievement. Okay, let's continue. Then we have organization. Organization talks about or pays attention to linking words. Although, however, on the other hand, nevertheless, in the first place, in the second place, on the one hand, on the other hand, right? So that's part of linking words. They give a structure to your production. Then we have cohesive devices. Cohesive devices are the expressions that will enrich your writing and will give it a sense of unit when you read it. Organizational patterns, how you organize the ideas that you have, as for example, the paragraphs are actually cohesive, are actually a single unit, or maybe is there an idea that shouldn't be there, should be in a different paragraph, for example. That is about organization. And finally, language. Basic vocabulary, everyday vocabulary, less common lexis, appropriacy of vocabulary, simple and complex grammatical forms, and grammatical control. When I say basic vocabulary, it means this production has basic vocabulary, has everyday vocabulary, or has a less common lexis. Less common lexis, it means that you have vocabulary that is not usually used, right? Is the vocabulary appropriate for the task and level? Or maybe is the grammatical aspect simple? The grammatical forms are simple, or are they complex, right? So that's important as well. And the grammatical control. Sometimes you don't have a good range of grammatical control, and it can be the case that maybe you're trying to communicate one aspect, but in the end you're communicating something different because you don't have grammatical control. Now, this is the last one. I mean, if you go back, or if we continue, and you see everything, we have language, organization, communicative achievement, and content. So these four are part of the criteria that Cambridge uses when we are going to assess a written paper. But in real life, because this looks so nice, teachers pay attention in the majority of cases, of course, not everyone, they only pay attention to language. They only look for mistakes. They only look for the correct use of grammar. They only focus on the correct use of vocabulary, spelling. No? They don't pay much attention to paragraphs. They don't pay much attention to content. They don't pay much attention to the communicative achievement. If the person who's going to read the paper will actually be satisfied with the answer. And that's what we need to teach our students and candidates in general. I say candidates because when we talk about an international exam, we call the students candidates because they're candidates, they're going to take the exam. And when we are in the class, they are pupils or students, right? But we need to focus on all these aspects. And it's important that we as teachers, we show this criteria to our students so that they know what writing really means. And maybe a good exercise would be just to exemplify. Something I do with my students is that usually when we have these writing workshops, I ask them to write an essay, for example. And when they write the essay, I mark the essay. I don't know if it happens to you, but when you I'm going to just ask you a simple question. When we mark a writing paper, it is my case. I don't know if it happened to you, but when you write a writing paper, doesn't it happen to you that you give the paper, you spend 10, 15, 20 minutes sometimes to check the paper, to give a comment. At the end of the paper, you write a comment about what things the student did well and what things he or she needs to improve. And obviously, as you work maybe at the language center, or maybe you work at school, you have your rubrics, and you write a grade, right? And then when you give the paper, let's suppose this is my paper, I say, okay, Jose, this is your paper. And Jose receives the paper, he looks at the grade, and he says, maybe, okay, it's an A, thank you, teacher. And he put it next to him. He doesn't read it. He doesn't pay attention to the mistakes. He doesn't pay attention to the recommendations. He doesn't pay attention to your comment. He just has a look at the score. Does it happen to you? Tell me yes or no, please, in the chat. Or it's only me?
Yeah.
Yeah, it happens to you.
Yeah.
And then you see your student, and not only that, if the ones who work at schools, as I do, maybe you will understand better, and the paper is here, and they put it on the desk. And then everybody goes to the break. And then you are just about to leave the classroom, and you see the papers that you took maybe 20 minutes checking on the floor, there, just there, right? So, why do you think students do that? Anybody, please tell me.
I could say, Jesus, that it happens. It usually happens because of maybe two reasons. Because the standardized test, they force students. They don't make the students move forward to read comments or suggestions, as you mentioned. No, just they really want to know exactly the score. No, it is 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and that's it. No, and also it is because the summative assessments or some assessment that we have in our curriculum, they normally are more quantitative. No? So that's why students just take a look only for the score.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with you, Andres. Sometimes they just care about the score. They don't care about the learning process. They don't care about the paper. Well, in the majority of cases, they are young and they don't care. But what could you do in order that this situation doesn't happen? How can you make it meaningful so that your feedback, as for example, Angelica writes, feedback is essential for students, positive feedback. Okay, perfect. but your student is not reading your feedback. So what strategy can you use so that your students can actually learn from their mistakes? Because that's proven. You learn from your mistakes. So what could you say? Or what could you do? Anybody?
This is what I usually do is I have students peer correct if you want, but or use Write and Improve, Cambridge, Write and Improve, so they don't feel judged, and they actually do it by themselves. So it's gonna be like autonomous learning.
Okay, okay. Yes, that's something that is very positive and it's very helpful. You can do the peer correction and you can use Write and Improve. And actually, Rosemary, that was the tool I was going to present later, but you just already said it. No problem, no problem. It's very helpful. Write and Improve is very helpful. But I have to include something extra about Write and Improve that I'm gonna do it later. But you cannot do peer correction all the time. And it depends a lot on the level, right? Because remember, it's writing. It's not that you are going to display the answers, number 1, B, number 2, C, number 3. Yeah, maybe you can do that. But when it is writing, I think that it is maybe a peer correction exercise just to practice assessment. To practice assessment, that's something I usually do. I give the rubrics to my students, rubrics, because it's writing, and they need to write the scores of their classmates. And they need to say why those scores were validated. And they need to write a comment by the end, as if they were the teachers. But why do you do this? You are not doing this because you think that your student is excellent and he has a lot of knowledge of writing. No, you don't do that because of that. You do that because you have your students familiarized with the rubrics, which for an international exam is very important. I do that, for example, with the IB. I am an examiner for English B for the IB International Baccalaureate Program, the diploma program. And the students, if you don't do that, they don't read the rubrics. If you don't tell them, okay, now you're going to assess, this is your score, remember, you are going to assess your friend. But when you finish, I'm going to assess the same paper. And if the divergence is more than 3 marks, I'm going to, if the divergence is within the margin of 3 marks, I'm going to give you an extra mark so that you are, you're going to get an extra mark. So the student will polish his correction. If he will read the rubrics and see the paper and read the rubrics and see the paper. My objective is not that they're going to be teachers. My objective is that they know the rubrics. So that is key. So in that aspect, that is something that is very useful. But
Jesus, can I add something?
Of course.
I use peer correction mainly when I notice that the class in general has a lot of grammar mistakes. And for these, I use plagiarism checker from Grammarly. And,
Okay.
you know, students have a hard time finding their own mistakes because, as I see it, writing is a photograph of how English is organized in their heads. So if a peer actually corrects, is going to find the mistakes so fast. Because if you make a mistake, you don't know it's actually an error because you don't know you made a mistake. But other student is going to notice it. That's what I use peer correction.
Okay,
Mainly if I
okay.
notice that the grammar level is quite low.
Yeah, but it depends. It depends on the proficiency of the students, because what happens, for example, it happened to me once that I had this strong candidate and weak candidate, you know, and I say, okay, you exchange papers, you're going to correct each other. They do it, and when the weak candidate gives me the paper of the other classmate, says, teacher, it's perfect. He's got a 20. In Peru, 20 is the maximum score. He's got a 20. And then you see the paper, and of course there are mistakes, right? But obviously this student cannot identify. And on the contrary, the other student says, no, this paper is actually not for this level, teacher. I gave him a 5. No? So it's always good to do that. Yeah, it works as you mentioned, but the second look of the teacher, it's key, right? Depending on what, for example, for grading purposes, sometimes they can complain. Parents can complain, no? But just as an exercise, in order to make sure that you notice that they are identifying the mistakes, yeah, it's helpful. But it depends also on the level, right? As practice, yes, Rosemary, I agree with you. As practice is good, no, to identify. Something that is related to what you did, and I didn't finish my idea before, is that what I did is that I, for example, asked my students and even teachers to write a paragraph or to write an essay. And then I extracted sentences which were incorrect. And I had a compilation. And they put them all together in one, from 1 to 20 in one document. And then I gave the document to them. And I say, all the sentences have mistakes. Please look for the mistake. And they were working on it. That's also another way to personalize your students' mistakes. Because in that way, what you're doing is that you're not working on mistakes that are given by the book or by Cambridge or by your institution. There are the mistakes from your class. And in that way, you're personalizing, right? Sorry, it says, even the students need to know the rubric in which they are going to score when they do this peer core. Of course, yes. Yeah. Now, when I was going to talk about the strategies, you know what strategy I use? I actually use 2 strategies. The first strategy is this. Because I was sick and tired of seeing the papers, I took so much time and effort correcting and marking on the floor. What I did, first of all, is to have a portfolio. And they had all the writing papers there compiled. So that they will see their improvement. And it was mandatory. And sometimes you have to be a little bit strict. And if you don't give them a penalty, they will not do things. So I did that. First step. Second step. Personal feedback. Let's suppose that today it was a writing paper in class. They finished. And I have all the papers here. So I take like 2 hours marking all my students' papers, so maybe 3 hours. I finished. And tomorrow, maybe they have to do a reading comprehension exercise. Or maybe they had to do, I don't know, some pair work, group work. They're working on a project, I don't know. An activity which can be monitored only by looking at them and they are working on a task. On purpose. Why? Because that way I called one by one. I was sitting and said, okay, Alvarez, come here, please. Sit with me. This is your paper. What do you think? And we go over the paper together. That way you are ensuring the fact that the student is looking at the paper. And then you ask them, what is the mistake here? And they will tell you. And then you tell them, this is incorrect because of this is incorrect because of that. I would advise you to do this, you should do this, you should do that. You can improve this. The positive aspect of your writing, that's the first thing you need to emphasize, is that you have paragraphs, you have a sense of completion, and everything that you can say. And then you ask them, what do you think? And they will say, okay, I think that I need to improve for this. Okay, excellent. This is your paper, you can go. Next. And you call them. Maybe you will not finish because there are too many. That's reflection, yes. And then the student will notice that actually the paper had a meaning for the teacher. And maybe as you have half the class today and have the other half of the class tomorrow, or maybe in 2 days, but you make sure that they are actually receiving your feedback. Another strategy, I don't correct mistakes. I don't correct, I locate mistakes. I give them the comment and everything and the score. I give them the score. But the only thing that I do is I circle all the mistakes I can find. All the mistakes. And you can do it in 2 aspects. Just circling, and then when you return the paper to the student, you tell them, okay, if you want to get 2 extra marks in this paper, right? I am going to return it to you, and you will have to present inquire why there is a mistake there. Maybe he doesn't see it, but in the end, he will do it. That is one way. The other way is that you can use correction language with them. For example, if you circle a word or sentence, you write, example, WO. What is WO? Word order. So the mistake is about word order. You give them the category of the mistake. You don't tell them the mistake. Because if you tell them the mistake, they don't read it. Okay? So that is very meaningful for the feedback they will receive, right? Or maybe it is an S spelling mistake. Or maybe the word is GM, grammar mistake. Or maybe the word is VM, vocabulary mistake. So those are, maybe you can just provide them with language so that they know what each of the symbols mean, and then they will represent it. Those are strategies that you can use so that you can ensure that your students are actually going to read your feedback. Because believe me, they don't read it. From a class of 20, you will have maybe 2 or 3 who will say, teacher, and why do I get this score? Why didn't I get a higher score? Or why this is incorrect? I thought it was correct. So you're going to have 2 or 3, but the other 17, they will not do it, right? Students need to know the conventions. Yes, the conventions are important, the text type conventions. That's why you train them for different text types. For example, we have essays, proposals, as I mentioned before. Conventional writing symbols, yes. Yes, very good, Andres. SP, spelling, G, grammar mistakes, yeah. That's another way to call it, yeah. We're talking about the same thing. Okay, that was about the assessment. Now the next part is the assessment progression. Well, actually, when I say the progression is how the assessment in FCE, CA, and CP is given. So the subscale content is common to all levels. Content talks about all content is relevant, target reader is fully informed. That's number 5. Number 3, minor irrelevances or omissions may be present, target reader is on the whole informed. Number 1, irrelevances and misinterpretation of tasks may be present. Target reader is minimally informed. When it says misinterpretation of tasks, it happens that sometimes the students don't have the required level to understand the instructions, and they don't understand the task, and they write about something different. That could be number 1. So content for FCE, CA, and CP is the same. But when we talk about the other parts, we have this, right? This is the remaining 3 subscales. We have the common European framework reference level, communicative achievement, organization, and language, C2, C1, and B2. So you can see there, communicative achievement in C2 is use the conventions of the communicative task with sufficient flexibility to communicate complex ideas in an effective way, holding the target reader's attention with ease, fulfilling all communicative purposes. In C1, it says, uses the conventions of the communicative task effectively to hold the target reader's attention and communicate straightforward and complex ideas are appropriate. Here it says straightforward and complex ideas. Here it says fulfilling all communicative purposes. So it's the highest level. And in FCE, it says communicating straightforward ideas, not complex. You see the progression, right? In organization, it says text is a well-organized, coherent whole using a variety of cohesive devices and organizational patterns with flexibility. C1, text is well-organized and coherent using a variety of cohesive devices and organizational patterns to generally good effect. Here it is an organizational patterns with flexibility. Here is generally good effect, not all the time. And in FC is linking words and cohesive devices. It doesn't talk about the effect. And in language is grammar and vocabulary, range of vocabulary, including less common lexis, similar to here, effectively and precisely. Here only says appropriately. You see that in the progression, it's as when you create your Rubik's, you see that there is a difference between each on the term that we use. So this is important to know, so that if you're training for exams if you are preparing yourself for an international exam. Okay, so this is the assessment progression. And then we are done with assessment. Then, so far, any question, by the way? I think that we are interacting in quite a regular
Teachers,
basis.
if you have any question right now, you can ask or mute your microphone, or you prefer rather texting in the box. But now you can ask your questions now.
Karen says you have to locate the mistakes, but you have to write why you did that. For example, when they use too many linking words. Yeah, but that's why you have a code, as Andres says, conventional writing symbols. Yes, they need to know. Obviously, you need to give them an induction. So you will explain to them first, so that they are aware what symbols you're going to use, right? And in the end, if they don't know, you have to tell them. Yes. All right, number 4. Analyzing a B2 essay. We're going to do it quite quick because actually this was a presentation I gave like a month ago about writing the perfect essay. And well, this is just an example. This is an essay for FC, your English class. You have been talking about the fashion industry. Now your English teacher has asked you to write an essay. Write an essay using all the notes and giving reasons for your point of view. What is the stimulus? Some people say that fashion industry has a bad effect on people's lives. Do you agree? Notes write about whether the people's appearance is important. Number 2, the price of clothes. And number 3, your own idea. This format for FC is always the same. So how many paragraphs do you have to do? In theory, you have to make 5 paragraphs. The introduction, point number 1, point number 2, your own idea, and the conclusion. That is the distribution of a regular essay for FC. So here we have a model answer. Fashion industry is very a discussed subject. So obviously it has mistakes because it's from a candidate. It's very a discussed subject nowadays. They create and design new clothes every day in order to satisfy some people's needs. There are many people who claim that the fashion industry is important and good for society. According to them, this industry designs beautiful clothes, and thanks to that, every person can wear shirts, trousers, or any accessory which is on today's fashion. On the other hand, the fashion industry, in some people opinion, right, controls the market of clothes, and because of that, they can't wear what they want to. In addition, the industry can increase the price of clothes, forcing people who don't want to be old-fashioned to buy and pay a large amount of money to keep beautiful. In my opinion, we can't let the fashion industry decide what we must or mustn't wear. We shouldn't judge people for its appearance because that is not important. We must wear whatever we like, want, and feel comfortable with. So this is a common answer, right? This is an answer to the previous statement. Okay? Okay, now, let's see what is the assessment for that. Obviously, I know that you have identified some mistakes. No? This is the assessment from Cambridge. In content, he got 5. All content is relevant to the task and the target reader is fully informed. The candidate discusses the importance of appearance in terms of fashion. This industry designs beautiful clothes and thanks to that, for example. And concludes that we shouldn't judge people for its appearance. The negative of, no, here you have evidences of the text, because when you give a mark, it's not only that is your criteria, you need to say why, right? So you need to say why this student got 5. Then in achievement or communicative achievement, 3. Why 3? The conventions of essay writing are used appropriately. There is an introduction, topic paragraph, and a conclusion. The register is appropriate for the task, using generally neutral language to discuss both positive and negative aspects to the question. Straightforward ideas are communicated using some appropriate language in order to, according to the industry, can increase, to introduce the ideas and to hold the target reader's attention. Yes, it's appropriate, but it's not a 5. Why is not a 5? Because in the communicative achievement, here it says that you have a general, the register is appropriate, neutral language to discuss both positive and negative aspects to the question. But in the end, the conclusion is not, let's say, it doesn't state a posture. So maybe the communicative achievement is not very clear. And remember that the feedback is about the can do, not about the things that he cannot do. That's why he got a 3. Organization 4, the essay is well organized and coherent. There is a clear overall structure and the ideas are linked across sentences and paragraphs using referencing, substitution, and paraphrasing to avoid repetition. There are a variety of appropriate linking words and cohesive devices. So if it gets a 4, something was not completely fully correct. That's why he gets a 4. For example, in my opinion, he could have used more cohesive devices. That's my opinion. And apart from that, yes, it uses paragraphs using referencing, substitution, and paraphrasing to avoid repetition. But at some point, there was some part that in which the ideas were a little bit redundant. That's why it's a 4. In language, number 3, a range of everyday topic-specific vocabulary is used appropriately to satisfy some of the, and then you have examples, no? Controls the mark, but some errors do occur with less common lexis. Expressions of today's fashion. He said today fashion. There were some expressions that were incorrect. A range of simple and some complex grammatical forms is used with a good degree of control. There are some repeated errors with prepositions and third-person verbs. But these do not impede communication. As I told you, if they impede communication, it's penalized. But here it's got a 3 because it's not, to get a 5, you need to have almost a C1 level. If you get a 3, that is a B2 level, according to the progression. But in total, this candidate got 8, 12, 15 marks. 15 marks out of a total of 20. It is not bad. It's a good score. But notice, language is 3, but content is 5, and organization is 4. So language is not the most important thing. I'm not saying that it's not important, but we cannot only focus on language, because having a 15 out of 20 for a Cambridge exam is a passing grade. It's like a B, right? So if you actually do the math and you multiply 15 times 5, that is 75%. That is a B in writing, right? A B means that you get 170 marks, which is very good. And it's not only about grammar, it's about organization, a communicative achievement, and content. So let's forget about the fact that we sometimes believe that grammar and vocabulary is the most important aspect in the assessment of writing skills. Okay? Then, well, this is the power of a good introduction, right? In an introduction, you need to be engaging to the reader, outline the general topic and a name, be of 3 or 4 sentences in length. Introductions in any text type are important, introductions in general. So these are some important things that we need to take into account. Include a rhetorical question if possible to engage the reader. So that's what a good introduction does for you. Now, let's see this. All introductions, right? Our topic question again. This is the topic question. Do you think teachers should allow their students to use tablets instead of textbooks in the class? Okay, here you have 3 introductions. But let's analyze how different they are. Technological advances have influenced everyday life, even the education sector. Some educators believe, myself included, that electronic devices ought to be used by learners during lessons. So why is a tablet considered a better learning tool? Here you have your rhetorical question. But now, can this be improved? Yes. Since the development of the internet technology has taken over many areas of our life, including education. Some believe, myself included, that educators ought to let their learners replace electronic books with coursebook. So, what are the benefits of using tablets during a lesson? Right? Sounds better. Can this be improved? Of course. Introduction 3. The internet and technology are crucial aspects of many fields in life, including education. Letting learners replace course books with electronic devices is, in my opinion, not myself included, in my opinion, a clever idea introduced by some educators. So, is a hard copy of a course book no longer useful? Can you understand and notice the difference of the 3 introductions? So, the 3 of them address the same question. But what I am doing here actually is to improve one step by step so that it matches my need, it matches my requirement, because maybe this needs to be more advanced. The third one is the best for me. So that's what you have to do with introductions. You need to pay lots of attention because that is the most important part of your essay or of your writing in general, because it's the one that will define if the reader will continue reading or not. When the reader starts reading the paragraph, the first paragraph, and he goes to the second one, he will read everything. But if the reader just reads the first one and he's not appealed about that, will not continue reading. Okay? Okay, IB program teachers really learn all of what you are presenting. Yes, you are right, Karen, because I am an IB teacher. And I learned it with the IB and Cambridge all together. With Cambridge because I had to prepare students for these exams, and with the IB because we have to develop many books about writing. Yes, thank you, Karen, for your comment. That's true. Okay, the next part. Conclusions. Good conclusions should summarize from our arguments. You never come up with a new argument in a conclusion. It's always about the previously mentioned arguments. If you come up with a new idea, that is completely wrong. Answer the question or stimulus. You need to address the first question and not include new arguments, as I mentioned before. So it's very simple, actually, but sometimes we forget. Okay. Now, online resources I can address, okay, I can give you, okay, I can suggest, right, for you. These are some of the ones I know so far. In my humble opinion, Grammarly, it's very useful. Not because you're going to cheat and you're going to maybe write your mails in a better way. No, it's because when you are corrected, you learn. People learn from their mistakes. And if you wrote something incorrectly, Grammarly will notify you. And you will say, oh, I thought this was this way, so next time I will not make the same mistake, right? And the other one is Write and Improve, as some time ago Rosemary mentioned. Write and Improve is a very good platform that can give you lots of practice on your own writing, and you can do it as a teacher, you can do it as an individual. They can write at home and they can be tested. Okay, let's explain a little bit about Write and Improve. Write and Improve is a platform from Cambridge. And in this platform from Cambridge, what you do is that you write, and the system of Cambridge will give you 2 important feedback. The first one is the level of proficiency that you have in your language, according to the computer. In the second feedback is what is the level of relevance that you have when you write. That's why you have a question here. Did you write about the question? 5 is best. This person got 4, right? And you have here what words are, they don't call them incorrect, they call them suspicious words, because maybe are not, they do not collocate. They maybe are expressions that shouldn't be there, or maybe you should use a different collocation. So, if we explain in detail, Write and Improve, it's here. For example, this is, you can see, this is one of the assignments I gave my students in IB Year 1 for the diploma program, class 2020. It says, the school magazine has asked for opinion articles for a new section called Art or Vandalism. You want to write an opinion article about reggaeton, saying whether it should be considered art or not. Write your article in 250 and 400 words. You write here, and then when they finish, they click on check. So this is an actual task that I did this year. And if you doubt it, here's my picture over here. So this is used with my 4 of secondary students. This was a task I gave them. And then, when they finish, they send me this, right? Obviously, they send me a screenshot of this and a screenshot of the text so that I can give any further feedback. This student, for example, got a level C1. And the feedback says, well done, your writing is improving and you raise your level. Use the feedback and think about ways to improve more. Revise your writing, click again when you are ready, or return to workbooks and try a new task, keep writing. And did you write about the question number 2? So maybe this was not very relevant, but the level of proficiency is C1. So as this platform is for free, right? But if you're a teacher and you want to monitor the production of your student, you have to pay. I don't remember exactly, I think it was like $16, something like that. But what I do in order not to pay is that I ask my students to send me the screenshot. I create the assignment or the task on different platforms. It can be OpenLMS that we use at school, or maybe use Classroom and they just upload the screenshots and then you give them feedback based on that. So this is an example of one of my students who got this score. So this way you don't have to pay. You just receive the screenshots and you evaluate from the evidence that you have. But the platform is very reliable. It's got a very reliable score. Okay? So this is something maybe personally you can use, or you can create a workbook. It's like a class in Write and Improve. And this is the text my student created, right? In the 20th century musical genre. And then all of this that is highlighted is because there is something that maybe is not wrong, not correct there. According, for example, here is a word that they don't, according to the Cambridge Dictionary, right? So maybe he should replace it. So those are the suspicious words. So that's a platform you can use, no? And well, thank you for your attention. If you have any further information, you can write my email. Maybe you can take a screenshot so that you have my email account, englishtowerperu@gmail.com or jesussalinas28@gmail.com. Well, actually, we have a center called English Tower. It's a teacher training center, and we are certified preparation center from Cambridge University exams. All right, and well, I don't know if you have any question. I don't know if you have any question. If you have,
Hey, teachers, you have any question you can ask to our special guest?
feel free to ask. And in the meantime, as you are thinking about your questions, I would like to share, right? And I talked to Andres, and he obviously has already been invited. I would like to share an invitation for you to an international academic seminar that we are organizing in the school I work for. I am the head of the English department there, and I want to share a brochure. It is a free event and a free certificated event. So it means that if you enter, if you enroll, I send you the brochure, everybody has access now. You can enter, you can be there, and you can get a certificate from Colegio San Agustin, from Cambridge, from Macmillan, and from Olmara, which is a representative here in Peru, certified by those institutions if you attend. It's going to be very interesting. If any of you is interested, there you have the invitation. All right? Okay, is there any question? Anybody?
Okay, any comments, any questions, teachers, you can ask right now to this webinar, or we say thank you to our special guest for sharing with us this important and very useful topic about writing, Jesus. No? So I will let you know, I have an email and I have been contacting some teachers about the certification that you are explaining us to attend. No? So I will let you know to the rest of the teachers, and we are going to attend as soon as.
Okay, that's great. That's great to know. Thank you, DOWLESS. Thank you. Thank you, Janet. Thank you, everybody. Janet, Amparo, Carlos, Liz, Rosemary, Alba, Angelica, Mercedes, Angelica Bravo, DOWLESS, Karen, and Janet, Alba, Alexandra, Julia, and Andres. Thank you, everybody, for being here. And thank you for the people who were following us on Facebook on this live streaming. Well, that's it, I think. Thank you very much. If you have any comment, you have my mail. I'm going to write it here in the chat just in case. If you have any other question, maybe about any other topic, if I can help you, if I can be of any help, I will feel glad to help you. I have been in Ecuador. I love Ecuador. It's really marvelous. When I went there, I really liked being there because people are really, really nice. It was a nice time there. There is my mail. Okay, thank you, Andres, for the invitation.
Okay, Jesus. Before I close the part of the program, I think someone is asking you something in the chat box.
Where do I work? I work for Colegio San Agustin here in Chiclayo. It's an IB school, and I am the head of the English department. As well as I work as a consultant for Macmillan, and I work in English Tower as the academic consultant here in charge of the academic area as well. So, you know, teachers work everywhere. In the majority of cases, teachers have 2 or 3 jobs. That's the reality, yes.
One day we're here, one day we don't know.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Thank you so much, teachers, for coming to this streaming. I hope you enjoyed it and I find it very useful. So next Saturday we'll continue, and I hope to see you there. No, invite your friends, your colleagues, and keep in touch with Mr. Jesus Salinas. He will clarify your any inquiries that you have. No, so have a nice weekend and see you next Saturday. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Goodbye.
Bye. 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 Bye.
Bye.